Hey, good afternoon to you. 406 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL. Making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, we've got Mary Katherine Hamm joining us in just minutes. She'll be here at 4:30. 5 o'clock, Kurt Schlichter stops by, and Congressman Tom Emmer's here at 5:30. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. I saw Elon Musk, who is pretty great these days. He tweeted a short while ago, "Wow, this is crazy." And so I was like, what's so crazy? I wanted to click in and find out. So I clicked in and I found out. And it's the Google search results. Everyone's talking about Google and how they're trying to rig the election. The Google search results for just the terms Donald Trump. If you type in nothing more than Donald Trump right now, you get the first things you get are news about Harris, Donald Trump. That's what you get when you search for Donald Trump. I didn't search for Kamala Harris. I didn't put her name in this at all. But it tells you news about Harris, Donald Trump. And then the first three headlines already. Trump loses it over devastating Fox News poll on Kamala Harris. Newsweek, Kamala Harris approval rating surges as Donald Trump falls. The Hill, Harris campaign hits Trump again over debate backtrack. What is this? I searched for Donald Trump. Why do I get Kamala Harris's amazing headlines before I get Donald Trump's website? What kind of search engine is this? Oh, they're rigging the election. Oh, okay. That explains it. Yeah. The Google search results. You see all the people who were trying to search for the phrase assassination attempt on TRU. You see this at all this weekend? Assassination attempt on TRU. You start typing it in. It gives you literally every other thing except for Trump. Assassination attempt on Truman? No, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for Trump. It was very recent. I think a lot of people are talking about it. If your search engine reflected the kind of conversation that people might be having right now, then it would probably prioritize that. It's not even in the listings. It's not even in the autocomplete feature on Google. You can't find that. Google says that there was no human interference that led to this. It was like, sorry about that. It was just our system that did that. Great. And so to remind you about Google's power, Google is in the vicinity of 90% or more of all global search is done through Google. So 90% or more of all collective civilizational understanding is done through Google. So when people are searching for things, it's Google almost entirely. You may not use Google because you may be sick of this crap, and good for you, and you may tell your friends, and good for them. But I'm telling you, at the macro level, at the societal level, if you're wondering, why are my neighbors so disoriented? Why don't they know what's going on? I've got news for you. It's Google. It's Google and the companies like Google who are very actively involved in a constant left-wing spin operation where they're either memory holding inconvenient facts or only lifting up the propaganda that advances the causes of the Democrats. Wikipedia is a perfect example of this, where there's constant left-wing meddling going on, the effort to strike anything about Kamala Harris's record. You know, the fact that her support for defund the police, her time as the border czar, and her responsibility for getting it under control, all being purged in the interest of pushing her over the finish line, because that product on its own is inadequate. So they're going to have to do something else. They got to put lipstick on that pig. And this is the way they're doing it right now. There's an amazing piece today. I saw the Washington Free Beacon highlighted this, but I want to bring you back to this. Is 2019. Kamala Harris has been engaged in public office for some time. She's been leeching off the taxpayer for some time in a relatively undistinguished career. Using her power in abusive ways, but not really advancing anybody's well-being other than her own. And there's a piece from a publication called The Union that's getting some attention today, thanks to, in no small part, the Washington Free Beacon. And the headline on it is the name of the author. It's not bad, but a guy called Terry McAteer. And the headline on it is Another Side to Kamala Harris. And he writes about how his son interned for Kamala when she was the Attorney General of California and had an awful experience, apparently. An awful experience. And he wanted to share it with the people back in 2019. This is when Kamala was running for president. She was running in the Democrat primary at the time. She was calling Joe Biden a racist. She was trying to beat him. And, of course, she failed miserably before they even made it to the California primary, where she was polling very low. Her home state, nobody even wanted her there. And here's what this guy writes. His name's Terry McAteer. He says, as many of you know, my family has some long political roots. My dad, J. Eugene McAteer, was a San Francisco supervisor and a state senator until his untimely death at age 51. I pursued the educational political route and was elected Nevada County Superintendent of Schools for 6 four-year terms, he writes. Our son Gregory loves politics and thought that it also might be his passion. A few years ago, I assisted him in securing a summer, non-paid internship with Senator Dianne Feinstein in her San Francisco office. Feinstein's office was unable to have Gregory start in June, but told him then that then Attorney General Kamala Harris was looking for summer interns. While I have nothing against now Senator Harris, as she is a good orator and has done some fine things while holding elective office, I believe, however, how she treats her staff is as important as an individual's legislative accomplishments. A person's character is probably one of the most important attributes for someone wanting to obtain the office of president. Presidential candidate and U.S. Senator Amy Klobuchar had drawn scrutiny for her berating treatment of her staff, he writes. Remember, she forced her staff. What was the thing she did? It was like she was yelling at staff. She ate salad with a comb. Wasn't that what she did? Was it? But did the comb belong to one of her staffers? I don't know what the. She treats her staff like garbage. That was the story on Amy Klobuchar. And this guy's remembering that, citing it. He says, this particular flaw by elected officials in dealing with common courtesy and respect toward staff is something for which most people in this country have little tolerance. Sure, the job is stressful, and we've all dealt with an angry boss in our lives. But there is another side of Kamala Harris which the general public does not know. Gregory, his son, had an eye-opening experience in Kamala Harris's office that none of us expected. For his sake, the month could not pass quickly enough. It was literally a month. We're talking 4 weeks of time this kid works for Kamala. And it was so miserable and so scarring that his father is now writing about it in a newspaper to convey to the world how awful she is. A single month of time, this kid was an intern. Needless to say, he continues, he was delighted to work in Feinstein's office for the rest of the summer. 4 short episodes I would like to share of his month-long internship for Kamala Harris. 4. Senator Harris vocally throws around F-bombs and other profanity constantly in her berating of staff and others. The staff is in complete fear of her, and she uses her profanity throughout the day. As Attorney General, Senator Harris instructed her entire staff to stand every morning as she entered the office and say, "Good morning, General." What a cartoon character this lady is. "Good morning, General," she demanded. I do think, who was it? I think Bill Barr said he thinks it's kind of silly that people refer to the Attorney General as General. It does strike me as silly. You know, General seems like that's a military rank. I guess, there are some people who refer to, you see it in Congress, they'll refer to attorneys general as general. But it does feel ridiculous. It feels as ridiculous as calling, a PhD doctor on a routine basis. Yeah, okay. I was looking for a real doctor. We all have an understanding of what a doctor is. "Good morning, General." Or Dr. Jill Biden. Eddie. She's a doctor. "Good morning, doctor." Never once during the month-long internship did Harris introduce herself to our son, as he was only in an office with 20 paid employees, and staff was too intimidated by her to introduce him. He was the intern. There's 20 employees there. She doesn't even care who this guy is. She's like, she doesn't even bother to introduce herself. Say hello to him, find out who he is. Nothing. The only acknowledgement was a form letter of thanks signed by Harris, given to him on his last day of service. Gregory was also given instructions to never address Harris, nor look her in the eye, as that privilege was only allowed to senior staff members. Well, that's positively North Korean. So you're not allowed to look her in the eye. You're not allowed to address her. You can't say hello to her. That's a privilege. It has to be earned by the senior staff members who've suffered just enough abuse to finally get that privilege. The father says, "I don't know about you, but this is not the workplace of someone who respects her staff. For a woman of color to have employees stand when she enters the room smacks of a bygone era that we as Americans deplore and find demeaning, he writes. Furthermore, that she didn't show the quality of leadership skills or even being a decent boss, much less the class, to approach Gregory at least once during the month to say, "Hi, I'm Kamala Harris, and I want to thank you for volunteering in my office," is really troubling. Finally, what is up with the "don't look her in the eye" instruction, he asks. I know I wouldn't want to work in that hostile environment. He says, I had Gregory read this piece before I submitted it, and he's willing to put his own integrity on the line because the truth is important to him. In fact, integrity and character are still virtues that can and should be upheld in our politicians and politics. We just haven't seen them in a while. That's Terry McAteer writing for the Union back in 2019. I wonder if Terry's going to re-up his criticisms this cycle now that she's, now that she's the lady, she's the person. The guy. She's the guy. She's running as the Democrat now. That's typical stuff. What are you telling me? Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Let me see here. I've got Micaiah calling in on line 5 from Silver Spring wants to weigh in on all of this. Micaiah, good afternoon.
Yes. Hello. Good afternoon.
Hi, Micaiah.
Thanks for taking my call.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Hi, you hear me?
I hear you just great. Go ahead. What's on your mind?
Okay, I just wanted to, comment. Her name, Kamala, should be Kamala, K-O-N, Kamala.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever I'm referencing her in discussion, I've named her appropriately Kamala. But also, these stats about her having all these votes. I think you referenced earlier that it was said that she sort of neck and neck with what the public, how the public is rating
in the polls.
Vote.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's all a lie. Polls, like everything else they present to us, it's all lies and a con. So, and it's the spirit, the Republicans and the Trump supporters, and make us feel like, we at the end rather than the front of this race.
I kind of like it, though. I was saying before. You don't even know
when and how to believe anything they say.
Yeah, I was saying before, though, Micaiah, that one of the things I like about it, though, is I like when they tell me that I'm behind. I kind of like it because that keeps me in the fight. This idea that the right, that Trump supporters should get comfortable, that, we've got such a huge lead, everything's going to be fine, let's not sweat it too much. That's not the attitude you want. You want everybody to be hungry, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's
yes.
I think that's good.
I think it's a bucket of lies. It's what it's always been and what it's always going to be.
It's everywhere.
Deception and lies.
When you say Kamala, that obviously you think that she's a big fat phony. Why is that? What strikes you as phony about Kamala Harris?
Her record.
Yeah.
Everything about her that's publicly known.
Yeah.
Kamala. K-O-N.
Kamala.
Her character. I mean, this is a reputation she has. It's public. It's veritable, and it's already a proven record that that's who and what she is and what she has done.
So it wasn't that long ago that Joe Biden said that she was in charge of fixing up the border, right? And said I've tasked my vice president with tackling the root causes here because we're going to get control of this border crisis. And Micaiah, you and I have watched over the last week and a half as the media has told us that was never actually her job. She was never border czar, and she had no meaningful responsibility to get a hold of this crisis. When you see all of this, what does that tell you?
She's a fake, she's a phony, and she's no accountability, no character, no integrity. She's in this for power. She's power thirsty, power drunk. She don't give a doggone about the entrance of nobody, but advancing her own, just self-advancement, just to get that power. And it's awful.
Yeah. And so what do you think of Trump then? Let me ask you, let me move to an issue I think that you're more optimistic about. What do you think of Donald Trump and his latest run for office?
hey, I'm in. I'm 100% in. I'm 200% in. Up until Obama, okay, up until Obama, I'm 57 years old. All my life, since my voting life has been Democratic. I'm African American, and that was my culture, my heritage. But I saw right through Obama, and I will always say he is the predecessor to Antichrist. When he was all about his first term, and I unfortunately gave him my vote the first term, when he was all about spending so much time on night talk shows rather than running a country, when they gave him that Nobel Peace Prize, and he was just full of pride and lifting himself up and, things that he campaigned for, he didn't fight against. And, it was always, but they won't let him, there's no bipartisanship. They're not going to let him. But I was like, no, I don't fall for that.
Yes.
Because he's too intelligent. He's too witty. He is playing the game.
He definitely was.
Keep himself alive.
And he became filthy rich. He became filthy rich off the presidency. And so did Biden, for that matter, as vice president. Trump, meanwhile, has lost a ton of money by becoming president of the United States. And now he's trying to do it again, definitely at his own expense. But boy, Micaiah, you've called it right.
The heart of the people. I mean, I believe Trump really cares. His agenda, his motivation, he really wants America to be great again. I think I was in my 30s when about 20 years ago or something, Oprah interviewed him.
Yes.
And he said he wanted to see America the way it was. He wants to go into politics and do what he can to put us back on the map.
Amen. Yeah.
And I believe, and even just recently, I can see the sincerity and the optimism and the hope that he has. And he cares about people.
It's a much more positive message. It's such a positive message compared to what the left is selling us. Finally, Micaiah, thank you for this call. So you said you have nicknames for Kamala and Obama. I've heard those. Do you have a Biden nickname by any chance?
Absolutely. Sleeping Joe.
Okay, that's an oldie but a goodie. I like that one too. That's a good one. Micaiah, thank you very much. Micaiah from Silver Spring. Appreciate that phone call. Wait a second. If you're going to have a segregated event, which one would Kamala join? Do we know the answer? Well, we'll ask all of these things to Mary Katherine Hamm when she joins us next. Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 4:36 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL. Where we're making sense of the news. Kurt Schlichter is here at 5 o'clock today. We'll talk to him about how we can stop Kamala Harris from seizing power. And then Tom Emmer, the congressman, will be with us at 5:30. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. The Kamala Harris campaign is being supported by a number of left-wing segregated fundraising events. I kid you not, they're actually holding events that are explicitly segregated by both race and sex. They're really drilling down as they do these. This past week, they had one for white women only, so black men not allowed, obviously. And here is one of the super cringe white women saying, well, just something crazy.
Ariel Fodor, affectionately known as Mrs. Frazzle to her combined audience of over 1.5 million followers, is here to help gentle parent us through this election.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I am so honored to speak today. I am shaking to just be among such incredible company. We are here because, as if you were here earlier, you've heard BIPOC women have tapped us in as white women to step up, listen, and get involved this election season. This is a really important time, and we all need to use our voices and influence for the greater good. No matter who you are all influencers in some way. So tonight, I'm going to share some do's and don'ts for getting involved in politics online and navigating the toxicity that comes with it. And spoiler alert, as much as the toxicity can come from the outside, it can come from us too. So first, don't isolate yourself. We can do our best work when we're in community together like we are tonight, because the toxic feels smaller when we support each other. But don't make it about yourself. as white women, we need to use our privilege to make positive changes. If you find yourself talking over or speaking for BIPOC individuals, or God forbid, correcting them, just take a beat. And instead, we can put our listening ears on. So do learn from and amplify the voices of those who have been historically marginalized, and use the privilege you have in order to push for systemic change. As white people, we have a lot to learn and unlearn. So do check your blind spots. You are responsible for your algorithm, believe it or not.
Oh, how many patronizing, pseudo-intellectual, up-talking Valley Girl whack jobs were on that call? A lot, actually, it turns out. Here with more intel on what's going on here, Mary Katherine Hamm joins us, the host of Getting Hammered, the excellent podcast, and a Fox News contributor. Mary Katherine, always so good to talk to you.
Hi, Vince. Thank you so much for having me. It seems like people are having some very silly goose thoughts about racially segregated political meetings, and I just want to correct where we're headed, because in fact, in order to fight white supremacy, we have to join with white only groups of friends to share. I know that sounds ironic, Vince, but that's what we're doing.
It's
okay?
Unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
Okay?
And you just made me realize. I left vocal fry off of my list of adjectives. This is amazing, Mary Katherine, because here you have the left, which constantly preaches to us about how we're supposed to handle things in a tolerant way, having literally segregated meetings, getting back to their roots.
No, it's really weird. It's really weird, Vince. And I'm quite sick of being told that I'm weird or that I have racial hangups by people who literally have to have segregated meetings.
Yeah.
Like, I'm done with that. I'm done with being gaslit in that particular way.
Yes.
And the thing about this type of communication is that it is like sort of like incredibly unself-aware. It does reach a certain kind of person who was all over that call, but is probably not a swing voter. So we can be thankful for that. But there's also something sinister about it, which is that she is looking to silence you. She is looking to say you can communicate only in ways and in groups that I think are okay. And that's what, actually, I'm familiar with her brand. I get served her content because I am a mom of many children, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So I get served her gentle parenting content, and it is exactly the same in its political content as it is in its actual gentle parenting content, right? So whether she's talking to a child or to an adult that she disagrees with, it is the same tone and the same messaging.
Uh-huh.
And I don't think that's particularly great for voters, right? Like, you have your say when it comes to how you parent. I'm not a gentle parent. I don't think it's a particularly effective philosophy. It doesn't work for me. However, you can do that to them. You can't do that to voters, right? There's like telling them condescendingly what they can and cannot do and who they can and cannot communicate with, I do think is not a great look and becomes sort of a barrier to anybody who's not used to being in these super weird academic spaces with vocal fry and making space for people and considering the microaggression. Like, that's not a place where normal people hang out.
No, not at all. So have you noticed that there's not a single traditional news outlet who's challenging the idea that there are segregated meetings for Kamala Harris? Like, I don't see anybody pausing for a moment to be like, hey, that's kind of crazy. Actually, that's right. So retrograde.
Seems like it should be a controversy. You know, and yes. Yet, basically, what it is that it's racial segregation for the right reasons, and they think that's fine. And the press, frankly, even more than I expected, and I expected so much fawning, but even more than I expected, has decided that it's along for this ride, and they're not going to ask a bunch of critical questions. I think the few that will try it, but it's not going to be much. And I would love for when she sits down for an interview eventually with whomever she gives an interview to, for that person to ask her what it means to have racially segregated calls. And I'm sure she'll laugh and she'll say it's no big deal. but it kind of feels like a big deal. Kind of feels like not a great thing.
Well, also, built into this, is not just the fact that they're segregating, but also that they have these racist ideas about people of other skin colors. So that woman you just heard from, Ariel Fodor, she says in that audio I just played that you are not allowed to disagree with a person of color. That if you have a disagreement, you are not allowed to voice it, because I guess the suggestion built into that is that that person is so fragile they can't handle disagreement.
Yeah, it is a very paternalistic view. And here's the thing about a lot of crazy liberal ideas is that they come from something that started out kind of normal. So it's kind of normal to say, hey, what are my blind spots? What about the way that I was raised and the way that I communicate means that I might not understand everything about everyone around me, right? That's a kind thing to do. But what it becomes is shut up entirely because you are around people of color, and God forbid they hear something that you say that doesn't perfectly align with their views. Now, this is not my experience in the Black community or other communities of color. When I've had conversations with people, it is not a place where I feel that you cannot express anything for fear that people would have a breakdown. I don't exactly know what they're expecting here. But in fact, I've had plenty of conversations with plenty of people of all races during my entire life because I grew up in a majority minority community of largely liberal people, right? But they have this view that you can't have those conversations, that to have those conversations is violence. Speech becomes violence. So instead of just like being nice to each other being the rule, it becomes this insanity.
There was a study actually that was done a couple years back. You may remember, it was 2018. Washington Post headline at the time: "White liberals dumb themselves down when they speak to Black people." A new study contends, and it pointed out the phenomenon that a study done by the Yale School of Management had concluded that white liberals would dumb themselves down when they talk to Black people, whereas conservatives, they wouldn't change their diction at all. They would communicate the same way they do with everybody else, which is entirely consistent with what you and I are talking about right now.
No, and most studies show that that conservatives, speaking of the science, because I know the liberals love that stuff, show that conservatives are far more open to having friends who disagree with them and to communicating honestly and not condescendingly with those people. I'm very glad of that. It's a skill I feel like I've built in life, and that makes my life happier and healthier, that I'm able to do that. And we ascribe to this very old-fashioned notion that separate but equal isn't good. And you should actually communicate with people who are different from you. And you shouldn't always flock to only your racial group for affirmations and for all of your life's adventures.
Yeah. And also that kind of panicked response to communicating with people you don't understand is a sign of insecurity, that you're just not actually comfortable in your own skin. Whereas I find that conservatives, by and large, are pretty comfortable in their own skin. They have their ideas. Sometimes they're wrong. That's okay. But they're willing to have these conversations. Not so on the left. Delano Squires, we just had on, he's so smart this past week, and he pointed out that the left really, when they talk about diversity, it's conformity of thought, diversity of faces is what they're looking for.
Right.
But that's not the case on the right.
No, in general, I find that because the right must be challenged by the culture at large, because the left is in charge of all the institutions, you just have more practice at it. Now, you can certainly have blind spots anyway, but you're encountering musicians, movies, Olympic ceremonies that do not conform to your beliefs constantly, right? And I don't think that they have the same experience on the other side. I watched one movie in like the last year, I think it was Tetris, that was very pro-freedom, very pro-capitalism. And I asked a friend, is this what liberals feel like watching movies all the time? Like, it's confirming every prior I have.
Yeah.
And it was very exciting. I got to say, it was a little intoxicating.
Wow. All right. Well, that's a plug for Tetris. I didn't realize that. That's cool. This one of the other things about these calls, these segregated calls that are taking place is they're cartoonish in their elitism. In fact, Pink called in to the white women call, and she was calling in from her private jet, talking about how they all needed to rally together to fight against the elites. I mean, it is actually completely over the top in the most hysterical possible way.
No, what's funny about that too is that she is calling from her private jet, but she actually sounded more normal than most of the other speakers who were like sort of pseudo-therapizing everyone into their vote. She was just kind of doing a normal Democratic pitch, even though it was from the private jet.
Sure.
But like, I do think there's something going on here where it felt very dated, not just because of the segregation, but because it was a Zoom. It felt like 2020. It had a weird vibe. And then it felt like people who are in a therapy session. And I don't want to be in a therapy session with politics or political leaders. I'm not interested in that. And I think a lot of other people, yes, even women, share that view with me.
Yeah.
It makes me uncomfortable.
There's a White Dudes for Harris event scheduled for this evening.
Yeah.
So white men are going to be producing content for this show for tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And
you know what? And you know what? They even have matching hats, which it seems like someone should find problematic, but no one has.
a white segregated group with matching hats that Democrats are putting together. When has that ever gone poorly? This event will include Pete Buttigieg. Apparently, he was known affectionately when he ran for president as Mayo Pete. I guess he's reprising the role.
I mean, look, I don't know how you get the title as like the most white dude, but if you could try, Pete seems to be the guy who's been trying, right? And so they're going to put him in charge of this call. He's had historically issues with minority communities voting for him, so he's going to be with his people now.
Yeah.
That's what he's doing. He's with his affinity group.
Yes, and he's with he's an actual surrogate for Kamala Harris. So he's Kamala's ambassador to white America, Pete Buttigieg. Is going to be doing this tonight. All right. In the meantime, we'll be tracking that and are always so grateful for our conversations with Mary Katherine Hamm. Thank you very much, Mary Katherine. Good to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Excellent work.
It's been great.
I feel so perfectly patronized. Thank you. It's 4:49 now. All right, let me go to the phones. I've got Charlie calling in from Spring Grove, Pennsylvania. He's on line 2. Charlie, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince, thanks for taking my call.
My pleasure.
Hey, I just happened to be reminded of the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence out there with the Los Angeles Dodgers when they had a little episode out there. So I guess, they just keep moving around.
So what Charlie's talking about here is that Olympic opening ceremony, all these drag queens and the big lesbian lady depicting the Last Supper and intentionally throwing up a bunch of middle fingers to billions of Christians all around the planet. And Charlie, there are so many indignities, I keep forgetting about them. You're reminding me of that. These were the drag queens who called themselves the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, honored at a, quote, pride event for the Dodgers at their stadium out in L.A., and you had Christians actually show up and protest. It was actually really encouraging to see that component of it. But once again, using athletics, using sports, which is the kind of thing that typically unifies people. They get together, and regardless of political or religious views, watch athletic competition. And even those worlds are being violated by this effort to treat Christians like garbage, Charlie.
Well, we've seen this repeated in the NFL, Major League Baseball, going back to the MLB situation. And, it's they like to cause division no matter where they go.
Yeah. I think our call is to speak up in the face of it and to protest and to reject it and to make it really clear that we're earnest, sincere believers and we're good people. In fact, many of whom really power our societies, and as a result, we shouldn't be treated like garbage. And I think people are sick and tired of it.
Well, it's refreshing to hear someone like Bishop Barron, come out in defense of
how about it?
The Christian faith. I think he deserves a lot of credit.
He does. And Charlie, I sense your next opinion on this subject because I have the same one. I'd like to see more bishops join him, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and I'd like to see some other. How about a Protestant denomination showing up?
Yeah, there's a lot of Christians out there who are not speaking, who are in positions of leadership, who should step up to the plate. This is an easy one. This isn't like this isn't like some distant call. This is a very easy softball across the plate. Go ahead and make contact. Charlie, thank you very much. I appreciate the call from Pennsylvania. Hey, coming up on the show, we've got a bunch of great stuff for you. As always, Kurt Schlichter's going to be with us next. His opinion on what we should and should not discuss on Kamala Harris. You ready for this? Nothing is out of bounds in attacking cackling Kamala Harris. Wow, I turned into Joe Biden there on that tease. And then coming up, Tom Emmer is going to be with us, the congressman. We'll talk to him about the big rally with President Trump in Minnesota. It was packed. It was packed. We have a lot to discuss.